morning, everyone. We will call the April 4th, 2022 meeting to order. I want to welcome Council Member Teixeira for her first work session. We will have a ceremonial swearing in this Thursday. She was sworn in last Monday into office, and so this is our new council for the next 2 years. Item 2.1.
Approve the Community Development Block Grant Agreement between the City of Clearwater and Homeless Leadership Alliance of Pinellas, Inc.
Thank you. Chuck Lane, Economic Development and Housing Department. In 2020, the city received 2 allocations of emergency CDBG funding, Community Development Block Grant Program funding, to be used to address community and housing impacts arising from the pandemic. These funds, that are called CDBG CV funds, will be used to fund this contract with the Homeless Leadership Alliance. The HLA plays a lead role throughout Pinellas County to coordinate efforts to address and to prevent homelessness. Over the last several years, and particularly throughout the pandemic, we've seen the cost of housing rise while wages of low, moderate income folks have not kept pace. As you all know, people are having difficulty affording a decent place to live. This agreement provides a service that I think is currently lacking. The program will provide direct assistance to residents, but also housing navigation services, where a trained housing professional will work one-on-one with a person to help find an affordable home. Under this contract, the HLA will assess a person's or family situation, and they will refer them to the type of services or guidance that they need. Some will be assisted to establish homeless service channels, and others will get the one-on-one assistance to find a decent, affordable place to live. The HLA is the right partner for this because they have direct access to the various services that will be needed. They're going to hire a full-time and a part-time employee that will be shared with the City of Largo to provide housing navigation services across the 2 cities. The majority of the funding of the contract will be spent on direct client costs such as rent, security deposits, moving expenses, and the contract amount is $104,441. I'll take questions, please.
Questions for Mr. Lane? What is the balance of that $1.3 million going to be used for the coronavirus program?
I'll be coming in a few weeks with a plan, an allocation plan for home art funding, and also we have to amend our CDBG CV plan, do that around the same time. Right now the balance is probably, we have some encumbered funding. We haven't spent a ton of it. We've encumbered about half of it. We've spent less than that. So we went out we put out another NOFA to try to get more interest and update some of these contracts. When we got into this, we have partners that just didn't have the capacity to move these funds, and we encumbered money that partners just weren't able to deliver on. So we've learned a few lessons, and I think the plans that I'm going to come with are going to be pretty sustainable for us.
Is there any expiration on using the money?
We have to spend 80% of the CDBG CV funds within 3 years of when we got them, so that's next June.
Okay. Any other questions? Consent? 2.2.
Approve an interlocal agreement between the City of Clearwater, the City of Clearwater Community Redevelopment Agency, Pinellas County, and the Clearwater Housing Authority to provide for revenue sharing and redevelopment of 306 South Washington Avenue.
So on March 14th, you approved this item in your capacity as the Board of Trustees of the city's Community Redevelopment Agency. This is an interlocal agreement between the CRA, Pinellas County, the Clearwater Housing Authority, and the city. The project, of course, is the Workforce and Affordable Housing Development at 306 South Washington Avenue. The city's role in this agreement is limited. It's limited to 2 paragraphs in the agreement, paragraphs 3 and 5. Paragraph 3 identifies the $880,000 loan from the city for construction and development of the project. The loan is fully funded with Home Investment Partnership Program funding, which of course is HUD funding that's been allocated to the city. The city's housing division will service that loan. Paragraph 5 discusses revenue sharing. CRA Director Amanda Thompson explained to you on the March 14th meeting that because the Housing Authority is now the owner and operator of the project will be exempt from ad valorem taxes. The revenue sharing component is in place to help the city and the county gain revenue in lieu of collecting those taxes, as long as the project cash flows sufficiently. The amount of the revenue share is $400 per unit annually. $100 would go to the city, $100 to the CRA, and $200 to the county. The Housing Authority's board approved this item on Friday, April 1st. The county has not yet scheduled it. I'll take questions, please.
Questions for Mr. Lang? It's been a long time coming. We keep moving the ball, hopefully. Consent?
Sure.
Yep.
3.1.
Approve settlement of workers' compensation for Jason Gorin.
Good morning. Rick Osorio, Risk Manager. Mr. Garan was hired on April 26, 2021 in engineering as a traffic sign and marketing technician. On May 27, 2021, he suffered a serious burn injury to his right foot while striping a parking lot. He was unable to return to work and placed on total temporary disability benefits. Mr. Garan was medically discharged from employment on October 5, 2021. The city has spent approximately $204,219 in total for medical treatment, legal and investigative costs, and disability payments to date. The city faces potential estimated payments of $100,000 for future treatment of his condition. His potential disability payments could reach $1.2 million lifetime, with additional legal and investigative costs that could reach $10,000. The city's potential exposure is projected at approximately $1.3 million in future medical care, disability payments, and legal fees. On January 13, 2022, this claim was settled at a state mediation for $200,000. Claimant counsel has agreed to accept this offer. The Risk Management Division, the outside attorney for the City of Clearwater, Mark Hungate, with banker Lopez Gassler, PA, and the city's Claims Committee recommend approval of this settlement. Take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Soria? Consent?
Yeah.
3.2.
Amend Clearwater Code of Ordinances Section 2.527, settlement of claims to increase the city manager's authority to settle and release on behalf of the city any claims or lawsuit.
Good morning again, Rick Osorio, Risk Manager. The proposed ordinance will revise the city manager or designee authority to settle and release on behalf of the city any claim or lawsuit both for and against the city up to and including $100,000, which is an increase from its current amount of $50,000. Also to approve that any settlement that exceeds $25,000, which is currently set at $15,000, shall be reviewed by the city attorney and or designee, and any claim that exceeds $50,000, which is currently at $25,000, shall require unanimous written concurrence of the city manager, city attorney, and risk manager or their designees. The Risk Management Division of the Finance Department respectfully requests the revision of this ordinance to allow for settlement of claims to be more efficient and to acknowledge that current claims settlement authorization levels are not sufficient in light of rising legal and settlement costs. I'll take any questions.
Questions? Councilmember Beckman.
Do you have an approximate number of cases that come through that are under that 100,000 that we could speed along, like a year or anything?
Sure. Well, just a quick background. Before 2017, this ordinance wasn't revised, was last in place till 1984. In 2017, it was revised up to the current level. And since 2017 through today, we've had approximately 6 claims that went to council. It's not a whole lot, but with this additional increase in authority, it just gives us more flexibility. Mediation, settlement conferences, state mediations, and it also recognized rising legal costs, medical costs, which we all know are rising. So it's a challenge for us sometimes in mediations, and sometimes attorneys don't want to wait, for council approval. So this gives us a little bit more flexibility.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
I want to know the number.
Okay.
Other questions? 6 doesn't seem that onerous to me. I don't know if I really support this. I'd at least, if I do approve it, I'd still like to know about the number of settlements, just so that we have an idea. From a risk perspective, I always wonder if, I understand some of these are outside too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've been overburdened with cases coming, and does it follow up negotiations that often that they have to wait for the council to make the decision?
Or you're absolutely right. Yeah, council has not been overburdened. Since 2017, we've had one in 2017 that kind of falls into this category that we're asking for. 2018, we had two. 2019, we had one. 2021, we were lucky we didn't have any. 2022, the one that kind of falls into this category was a previous one that we presented at the last council session, Linda Damsky. So you're right, we haven't, presented a whole lot, but what you don't see in the background is the struggle, and I know that's a dramatic word, that myself, Mike Fuino, who's pretty much involved in these high-profile cases, have to work in as far as the parameters of having to realize and also to transmit to plaintiff counsel that this has to go to council for approval. It has not been a big barrier per se, but it does complicate things. It would make the mediations and settlement conferences that we attend a little bit more fluid for us, gives a little bit more, elbow room. And, with the current climate, with claims and the public's victim mentality that seems to be growing, who knows what's going to happen in the future, but this would give us a little bit more flexibility at these conferences. But you're absolutely right, Mayor. The council has not been overburdened, but in recognition of what's been happening, in cases that we've managed at settlements and mediations, settlement conferences and mediations, it would give us a little bit more help as far as settling these cases. And plaintiff counsel and their clients won't have to wait, for the next council approval. Just a matter
So what
of...
prompted it, though? Is it that in the mediations, the time frame that has to be waited upon because of council, and couldn't it be helpful with your negotiations, the fact that you have to go to an elected body who's representing the citizens of the city?
Yeah, and we do use that often.
But you won't under 100,000 anymore.
Yeah. No, we do use that exact reason that you just stated, and it works probably 50% of the time, maybe a little bit less. But like I stated before, the 100,000 would just give us more fluidity at these conferences and just make these settlement negotiations more efficient. So.
Councilmember Beckman.
Yeah, well, as I asked that question about how many claims, so you said approximately 6, which the mayor said doesn't seem like that many, which I agree. But I guess the better question is, how much money and time do those 6 cases represent? And where your point that in negotiations you say, well, you have to bring that back to the council who's representing taxpayers and citizens, it's like, well, why not? I mean, why not drag it out and have one last ask, right?
Yeah.
And so if they didn't have to come to council, then when you're negotiating, you've got all that power there to say, this is what we're doing. It eliminates another step, right?
Yeah, and you bring up an excellent point. Some of these cases can be settled before they file litigation. Sometimes the demands warrant settlement over $50,000, and we can work with attorneys through the claims committee to settle them before they get to litigation. When they get to litigation, that's when it takes up a lot of legal expense, takes up a lot of my claims staff's time, my time, which, and we know that's our jobs, but again, that's taking time away from other claims that we should be working on. And so having this authority actually will prevent some litigation being filed up to a certain level. But that's a very good point. There's the background expenses that we don't see in trying to negotiate these cases. Yeah.
Any other questions? Councilmember Bunker.
Can I ask Mr. Margolis his opinion on the burden is placed on the legal department? And will this alleviate a lot of their problems?
I would say that in my opinion, the best argument in favor of this is not so much the burden that it's on my staff, which I don't think is all that great, to be honest. But I do think there's a compelling argument that could be made that when we go through the public settlement process, when Mr. Osorio, Mr. Polino, whoever is up here is talking about that, that tends to attract other claims, because that is a very, very public process. And so I do think a reasonable argument can be made that this would save money for the city because it does streamline that process, partially because it does not require that very public discussion of it, and then partially because of that pre-suit opportunity that Mr. Osorio alluded to. On the other hand, it is raising the authority, so could that actually have an increase? It could, but to Councilmember Bunker's question, I'm not concerned about it from a staff level, but I do think reasonable policy arguments could be made in favor of this.
Thank you.
All right, we'll talk about that further on Thursday. 4.1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Approve an annual general permit with Pinellas County to construct and maintain natural gas facilities.
Good morning. My name is Alex Leon, engineer manager with Clearwater Gas. This item is
With a
new.
workers' comp claim,
I'm sorry?
with a workers' comp claim right here. So, but it's under 100,000, so you're good.
Well, I wasn't going to make a claim, but okay. This permit is a renewal for our annual permit for Pinellas County. This permit allows us to do our regular maintenance work and installation of our pipelines in our pipelines facilities. And typically it's within 5 feet of the curb. And so this will just be a renewal to allow us to continue that work without having to seek individual permits every time we do work.
Is this figure right?
The
$2,800 and
that's
$2,813.
right. That's the fee for the permit.
Okay.
Yes.
Questions?
Not bad.
Consent?
Yeah.
4.2.
Thank you.
Approve a utility work by highway contractor agreement with the State of Florida Department of Transportation to place out of service and remove natural gas mains during a road improvement project on US 19 from State Road 580 to North Side Drive.
Good morning, Brian Langill, Assistant Director for Clearwater Gas System. This is a DOT project where they're going to be installing overpasses north of the Countryside Mall of State Road 580. This particular project is one of two. It goes from just north of 580 to Northside Drive, which is just a little south of Curlew Road. So they'll be starting those overpasses here pretty soon. The DOT, under this contract, they would remove any of our gas lines that are in conflict with that, and those are in your agenda item. This one is approximately 16,000 feet of gas main that would need to be removed with the project. Having them do that avoids us having to go in during the project and potentially cause delays in with their contract work and having assessed penalties.
Questions? Consent? 4.3.
Approve a utility work by highway contractor agreement with the State of Florida Department of Transportation to place out of service and remove natural gas mains during a road improvement project on US 19 from North Side Drive to County Road 95.
Brian Langill once again. This is part two of that agreement. It's in conjunction with the first one. It goes from Northside Drive up to County Road 95, and which is just north of Curlew Road. So that would install that overpass at Curlew Road. And that's currently where that project ends at this point here. The DOT will be removing the gas pipeline that's in conflict as well in that location. Any questions?
Questions? Councilmember Beck.
I don't remember if this was a part of the attachment, but do you put a temporary pipeline in?
So we'll
what do you
be,
do?
our subcontractor that works for us, the city will install the new mains prior to construction with DOT.
Okay.
So we'll go ahead and do all that work, and then as they start their project, they'll either remove the pipe that's in conflict or they'll grout it and leave it in place if they don't need to remove it. It's a little bit cheaper for them just to leave it in place versus removing it. So that's why you have different line items there on the cost for removal versus keeping in place.
Is it an environmental hazard to leave it and cap it and leave it underground?
No, there's no environmental hazard doing that. It's just if there's any type of conflict or it's going to be close to the new utilities, they'll want to remove it if it's going to get in their way of operation during the whole project.
But it's abandoned, it doesn't have gas in it.
It's abandoned. If it's in place, it'll be grouted, so it'll be filled in, so that way It won't, if it were to collapse,
Right.
if it was just hollow, it won't cause any depression in the road or anything like that. Because all those lines are going to be underneath the road, probably the frontage road moving forward.
Other questions? Consent? 4.4.
Accept a gas utility easement from Largo East Bay OMB LLC for property located at 4445 East Bay Drive, Suite 307.
Good morning again, Alex Leon, Engineering Manager for Clearwater Gas. This item is a utility easement for Largo East Bay. This will allow us to essentially install a pipeline with an easement and allow to provide service to our customer.
Questions? Consent?
Yeah.
4.5.
Accept a gas utility easement from Imperial Palms Apartments Limited Partnership for property located at 101 Imperial Palm Drive, Largo, Florida.
This item again is similar to previous. Utility easement allows us to provide gas to the apartment complex. It'll be 5-foot easement, allows us to install it within the property.
Questions? Consent?
Yes.
Thank you. 5.1.
Approve a purchase order to Emerald Facility Management of St. Petersburg for pressure washing and cleaning services of city hardscaping.
Good morning, Mayor, Council, City Manager. Jim Halios, Director of Parks and Recreation. This item that we have before you is our annual pressure cleaning contract for $175,000. It's a one-year contract with 2 one-year renewal options, and this encompasses pressure cleaning of Beach Walk, downtown Clearwater, certain areas in our Parks and Recreation facilities and our playgrounds. And I'd be happy to answer any questions with that.
Questions for Mr. Halias? Councilmember Beckman.
I have a bunch of questions on this one. This one was kind of interesting to me, Jim. So when I looked at the response listing, so we have 4 firms that responded, and it's a real small contract, right? 175. So we have small business enterprise and minority women business enterprise. And so that was great. We've got some small businesses and some minority women-owned businesses that applied. And then when you go to the bid tabulation, I'm like, wow, what is that huge differential there? And it looks like, there's a total bid price for different groups or different projects. Maybe it's Beach Walk and maybe it's the rec centers and whatever it is. I don't have details about those, but everybody bid on every single group, and then the price per square foot is really, I'm having trouble making the numbers work. So if Santana Pressure Cleaning has 0.04 cents per square foot, and they're at 172,669, and then Emerald is at 0.04 cents per square foot, and they're at 99,000. I'm like, okay, pressure washing is a pressure washer, soap, water, and labor. And so there's nothing easier to understand than pressure washing. So can you help me understand how those numbers are so different?
I think one of the things to look at is we do require in those pressure washing is hot pressure wash to have that done. So some of these companies may not have that equipment, they may have to rent it.
Okay.
So if they rent that out, that could be a change in the reflected in their price. Whether if that company does have that equipment, then we're not seeing that price passed along to us per the rental fee. It's built in and already baked into the price.
Okay. So you think it's mostly renting equipment to make it, or
Yeah, and it
some
could be the
kind
type
of
of, not
required?
so much just the hot pressure wash, it could be the scale of the equipment that they use, but a lot of times that is the case.
Okay. Okay. And then, okay.
Other questions? It could also be their margins. They may just decide on a higher margin, that's what they're willing to accept. Councilmember Bunker.
No, I'm just happy to see that staff has been impressed with Emerald, and they're getting raves. So look forward to continuing with them.
So Jim, 2 things on the beach walk. Did they do some of that restoration work in that test area, or was that a different company?
That's a different company, so that's just a total, that's going to be a total refurb that we'll be bringing back to you when we get that information sometime within the next probably 3 months.
But I would assume pressure washing was still a component of that.
It is, because it's the prep work. So again, what we could do is this is, based on certain service intervals, so we can always just back that out, and then we wouldn't come to that 175 because we would probably back a pressure wash out of that because we wouldn't need it because they'd be prepping it to get the work done. But again, that could be up to a year out when we have that project done, so we can reflect those changes when we bid that restoration project out.
So we're still looking a year from now for the refurbishment?
Yeah, probably once we get everything out on the street and just the way that, how long things are taking with contractors on the street.
Okay, tell me about downtown with the pavers and pressure washing. Are they blasting out sand between the pavers that makes them less stable? Or do they use, those brushes?
No, they'll use the brushes where they they walk through and it's on a circular thing, and then they back down on the PSI, because, we have certain requirements in there that we give them the manufacturer requirements on the pavers. We work with engineering on that to make sure that they're not doing anything adverse to it. And if you're specifically speaking of the pavers in the crosswalks areas, that we're looking at,
I'm talking
don't touch
about more
those.
on the sidewalks.
Yeah.
We're getting some floating corners and other things, and if they're pressure washing, I'm concerned they're gonna undermine the sand below.
No, we can reiterate that to them about the PSI that they're using and everything.
Because I don't want to see Rick
Again,
with any claims, so, okay. Any other questions? Yes,
Just one
Councilmember
last
Beck.
one. Once we make our decision on Thursday night, then it's public record what those bids were. So I could pull up all four and look at them, right? And see the
yes.
comparison and learn where that differential really is. Okay.
And this is a consent item. Do you want to take it off consent, or is everyone? good
No,
with consent? Okay. All right, 6.1. Thank you, Mr. Halios.
5.2, approve a
Sorry.
purchase order to Wesco Turf Inc. of Sarasota for the purchase of landscape maintenance equipment.
Yes, this item that's before you is for landscape maintenance equipment for Crest Lake Park. As you know, this park will be open a year at the end of this month. Initially, when we brought on the park, we were hoping that we could transport equipment back and forth and use existing equipment. But the amount of time it takes to trailer equipment back and forth and the downtime that existing staff at the park have waiting for that equipment, it just makes more sense from a sustainability perspective and also just from a work product and productive hours perspective to have that equipment on site and dedicated to Crest Lake Park.
Questions? Councilmember Albrecht.
So, when I was walking the neighborhoods across from Crest Lake, there was some complaints for some of the homeowners there about the big pile of mulch. I might even have asked you that before, but there's a big pile of mulch that looks like it's been there for a couple of months. Is that your storage area for the mulch for the park? Is that being used for a specific remodeling of some of the planters, or?
I'll have to check on that because traditionally what we do is when we drop mulch like that, it doesn't stay out in the open. It'll be utilized in the next few days, so I don't know if there was some miscommunication, but I'll find out for you.
It's been there for months.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Beck.
Do we have a storage facility at Crest Lake that'll house all this stuff that can?
Yes, actually right adjacent to the restroom facility, there's a fenced off area, and we have like club cars, things that staff currently uses, that we'll be able to put the mowers in this area to secure.
Consent?
Yes.
6.1.
Approve an increase of purchase order to Prison Rehabilitation Industries and Diversified Enterprises.
Good morning, Chief Dan Slaughter, Police Department. The first item is an item to request a purchase increase to PRIDE, which is the Prison Rehabilitation Industries and Diversified Enterprises. Not too long ago, we started on a project to refurbish some command vehicles. We had some surplus funds that remained available, and we were seeking to reallocate $30,000 of those funds so that we can repaint 3 additional vehicles so that they match the 2 that we just had refurbished. The special purpose vehicles being painted are the SWAT vehicle, which is a 2009 vehicle, a 41-foot housing unit, and a Ford E450, which is used for our emergency response team. more than happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Chief Slaughter? Councilmember Beckman.
Well, I'm super excited about this. I like that Pride program a lot, but I wanted to understand why how this qualifies as a non-competitive purchase.
Based on, by statute, the prison system, or the system that's in place to utilize the prison labor ends up being a low bid, so we utilized something through our finance department where the purchasing manager has the ability to look at it as impractical.
To send it out for bid, okay. Do they offer other kind of services that we could?
We've used them on multiple vehicle refurbishment. They do a lot of work, and they've done really high quality work, and even when we have gotten quotes from other vendors just to check it, they've been far superior with price and quality.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Consent? 6.2.
Approve an increase to the purchase order for Axon Enterprises, Inc. of Scottsdale, Arizona, for the purchase of Axon signal units and Axon signal unit cable assemblies.
Back in November, the council approved the acceptance of a Department of Justice JAG grant, an amount of $27,900, and you obtained that grant for the purpose of purchasing additional signal devices. When we first went down the path of getting a body-worn camera program, we deferred installing the Axon signal devices at that time, trying to use grant dollars to purchase them. In the past, we purchased 140 of them with grant dollars, and this is an additional 100. This will completely outfit our vehicles with the Axon signal device, which is the device when you turn on your lights, it automatically activates the camera. If the vehicle's in suspects a crash or something of that nature, it automatically activates the camera as well. So this will fulfill that element of getting it installed with the auto activation of the vehicles. Or have to answer any questions.
Any questions for the chief? We can't put this one on consent. I directly own Axon stock, and I asked the city attorney if that was a conflict, which he indicated it would be. If I owned it in a mutual fund, it wouldn't be a problem, but I own the stock directly. So on Thursday, we'll determine who the vice mayor is, and they can take over the meeting for that short period of time. Mr. Pinellas.
Yeah, just to add to that for a moment, due to the quirk and timing, because of where this will be on the agenda, it is likely we'll not have a vice mayor at the moment when this arises. So Councilmember Albritton could preside over this item as the next senior member, because technically we won't have a vice mayor at that exact moment.
Okay. Any other questions? 6.3. It's a good stop.
Approve an event license agreement between Jones Lang LaSalle Americas, Inc. for the purpose of hosting an Operation Shredded Medicine Take-Back event at Countryside Mall.
So the mall has recently changed ownerships, and they require us to execute this particular agreement to do the event of Operation Shred or Drug Take-Back. We have used that location multiple times. It's a very positive location for us. The citizens are really well aware that it occurs there. The ingress and egress is very advantageous for us. And so we're looking to execute this agreement. It had to come to council because it has an indemnity clause, which is why it's with you. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the chief? Consent?
Yeah.
7.1.
Approve supplemental work order 2 to engineer of record Santa Consulting Services for the Lift Station 16 Pierce Street rehab project.
Good morning, my name is Jeremy Brown, Engineering Manager. Lift Station 16 is located towards the western end of Pierce Street. It's immediately south of the future Imagine Clearwater site. Due to the proximity of this lift station to the Imagine Clearwater project and potential future bluff development, it was deemed important to provide a canopy structure with cladding and sufficient landscaping to better screen the facility. The supplemental work order before you today is for the additional work associated with those additional components. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Brown? Councilmember Beckman.
So this was another interesting, they're all interesting items, but this one was interesting. How many lift stations do we have in Clearwater?
Public Utilities has about 74. There's another maybe 5 to 10 that are owned by other departments, but Public Utilities operates and maintains them.
Are they all about the same?
No.
Okay. And so so what I'm thinking about is we've got $133,000 for a canopy structure and siding to cover this lift station to make it look nice down there at our Premier Park. Does it have any capacity for solar panels on the top?
We looked into that, and it was deemed that they weren't really, they wouldn't make a significant impact to the energy usage. These lift stations use a lot of energy, and there wasn't really a place to put all those solar panels that would be needed.
Okay, so they wouldn't make a significant impact, but they do make an impact.
We looked at things that like such as there's 24-hour lighting that these lift stations have. We looked at some things like that, and the engineer ended up recommending against it.
Do you know how many could have gone on top?
I don't know that now.
So the engineer recommended against it?
It wasn't deemed economically viable.
Okay.
Mr. Jennings.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the main components that we do look at for specifically a cost-benefit analysis as to whether we would put X number of panels on that would have X number of benefit to the city. We are looking at larger opportunities that have a much bigger impact.
Do you have a follow-up?
Well, I think my philosophy is if you can put solar on it and generate electricity, you are saving money by not having to pay for that electricity, regardless if it's 2 or 3 here or a field of 400.
But you do have to pay for the solar.
Yeah,
So
the panel. But this panel generates this many kilowatts versus, and it's the exact same generation of electricity as it is on a 400, field, solar panel field. Generates the same amount, goes into the grid the same, and if that lift station is running some kind of 24-hour decorative lighting or, it requires electricity, if you're generating it right at the source, you're maximizing the benefit of that electricity because it comes right from the panel, right into where it's being used.
If I may,
Yeah.
this particular location, if you can visualize where we are, all right, we're right next to where the causeway is going, the bridge, right? And we're also next to, there's some development that's south, and there could potentially be development to the east. There really wasn't going to be much time during the day to capture enough sunlight that would make it economically viable.
So the photogenics aren't good.
Correct.
And that's a different response, yeah.
We
I
do
get
look
that.
at these, we do try to incorporate these wherever we can. This particular project, it just wasn't going to be successful.
Any other questions? Consent?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. 7.2.
Approve the final plat for Bayside Point.
We may not want to approve any more plats. Just kidding.
Good morning, Council. Kyle Vaughn, Engineering Department. This plat will create 36 lots for attached dwelling units on approximately 2.5 acres. It will dedicate no new rights-of-way, and it will dedicate drainage and utility easements on private roads throughout. And it was approved through the DRC on June 4th, 2020, and I'll take your questions.
Any questions? Councilmember Beckman.
Do you have any idea on the total number of homes, condos, townhomes that they're going to put in on that property?
There'll be 36 units.
36 units? Okay. And then who's the developer?
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I can get back to you.
And do you have an expected completion date?
No, I do not.
And are they going to be market rate?
I don't know.
Okay. I bet they're market rate, right? Because otherwise okay. Thank you.
Other questions? And this can go on consent?
You're just accepting the plat.
Okay. Consent?
Yep.
Yes.
7.3.
Approve the final plat for Sharkey Townhomes.
Kyle Vaughn, Engineering Department. This plat will create 8 lots for attached dwelling units on approximately 1 acre. We'll dedicate no new public rights-of-way, and we'll dedicate 2 10-foot wide utility easements on the east and west sidelines. It was approved through the DRC February 4th, 2021. And I'll take your questions.
Questions?
Well, I had some similar questions about developer market rate and completion date, but we probably don't have those right now.
Consent?
Yep.
Yes.
8.1.
Approve the annexation initial future land use map designation of residential urban and initial zoning atlas designation of low medium density residential district for 3065 Cleveland Street.
Thank you. Connor Brotherton, Planning and Development. This voluntary annexation petition involves a 0.15 acre property consisting of one parcel of land which is currently vacant. The applicant is requesting annexation to incorporate the property into the overall campus of Calvary Church for future use as additional parking. Upon annexation, the property will be assigned a future land use map designation of residential urban and a zoning atlas designation of low medium density residential. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? We'll discuss that further on Thursday. 8.2.
8.2 is continuing to a date uncertain, and it's the annexation initial future land use map designation for the US 19 Neighborhood Center and initial zoning atlas designation for US 19.
Any questions at this time?
No.
9.1.
Authorize the piggyback of Omnia contract to CWG of Vernon Hills.
Mayor, Council, Dan Mayer, IT Director. This item is for us to purchase our Commvault hardware and software backup solution. We've been using them for the last 7 years, and this will upgrade 3 of the devices. It will renew maintenance for the next 3 years, and then upgrading two devices in 24. Be happy to answer. I was also providing cloud backup, so diversifying offsite.
Questions for Mr. Mayor? Consent?
Yes.
9.2.
Authorize the piggyback of Florida State contract software value-added reseller services to Carasoft from Reston, Virginia.
Mayor, Council, this agreement allows us to purchase endpoint monitoring software. The product is called Splunk. This is for those who use our network, Big Brother software, so we can see what users log on, what they access. We use AI to monitor their behavior, and then it does auto alerts. I think one of the important things to know is this will involve probably managed services with a contract for monitoring by a firm, not with the city. So we'll basically outsource some of the monitoring. That will occur after we do the setup. It's imperative that we really understand how it is designed and how it works for our engineers. But because the threats are 24/7, we want a firm who's invested in keeping track of that and consult with us when we have any kind of abnormal behavior.
Questions for Mr. Mayor? Consent? 9.3.
Approve a contract to First Arriving LLC of Ashland, Virginia for digital signage and dashboard software and installation services.
Good morning, David Pearson, IT Manager. This item is for digital signage, and it's inclusive of hardware, software, and support costs. Late last year, the fire department approached us for digital signage for its 14 fire stations. At the same time, we have a handful of departments with end-of-life solutions that will need to be replaced. So this is our chance to bring those under one umbrella and centrally manage it.
Questions? Why do we need digital signage at fire stations?
In the case of fire, the signage is installed in their common areas at stations. It'll integrate with their computer-aided dispatch system. So as a call comes in, they get a preview with more additional details before they head into the trucks and make their way to the site.
So when they're suiting up and everything else, they might wear different things?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions?
That was my question.
Well,
Thank you.
I beat you to it, sorry. Councilmember Bunker.
Not a question, but I watched the video demo from the company, and I was very impressed with the way it functions. So I think it would be a great benefit.
Consent?
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you. 10.1.
Authorize purchase orders to multiple vendors as listed for various plumbing, replacement, and repair parts.
Good morning, Gary Krawczyk, Building Maintenance Superintendent. The Building and Maintenance Division is responsible for the repairs of plumbing issues citywide. The Building and Maintenance staff is requesting the ability to piggyback existing contracts for various plumbing projects throughout the city for the duration of the respected contracts. This will allow the Building and Maintenance Division to benefit from the previously negotiated prices for the various items requested. Any questions, please?
Questions? Mr. Margolis?
Not a question per se, but Mr. Fuller and I have been talking with Mr. Gloucester on this. The last two sentences of this item are ones that I would ask to be stricken from this because they seem to go beyond what our purchasing code would actually allow.
So that will be altered for Thursday?
That is
So
fine.
we'll leave this off consent, or can we leave it
I can
on?
alter it for Thursday, so it can remain on consent if the
Okay.
board returns on it.
Any questions? Consent as altered.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Jennings.
Sir, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I was wondering if we could just take a couple of minutes at this moment. I'd like to introduce Dan Mayer. Come up, special announcement.
Okay,
Special.
this is scary.
Yeah, well, it's gonna get me in trouble, I just want you to know that. I just wanted to bring to the council's attention that Sabrina Chute, who's been an employee for 33 years, will be leaving us in approximately 10 days. So this will be her last time in the council room in official capacity, and she doesn't like speaking, so we won't make her get up here. But I wanted you to just know that, and she's been a vital part of the growth of our department and establishing a service level and a response that is really second to none in terms of support of the operation. So she's been a hugely valuable employee, and she'll be dearly missed.
Sabrina's been dynamite. She's gotten me out of a bunch of technical dilemmas without breaking equipment. So, Sabrina, you will be missed. We wish you the very best of luck in your next endeavor or retirement, whatever you're going to be doing. And thank you for training up so many people. You and Dan have built a good bench.
Thank you so much. There will be a lunch. I'll make sure the council gets that email. So.
Anything for a free lunch.
Yeah.
All right. So consent on that. 11.1.
Elect a council member to serve as vice mayor. Council members, as you know, City Council Rule 5 administers a rotation among council, and the next vice mayor is scheduled to be Councilmember Bunker, but as he stated at the last council meeting, so we'll put this off for Thursday unless council wants to discuss that. But I know that Councilmember Bunker, you said you were going to make a motion to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, as some of you know, I've been dealing with some health issues that made me miss a couple of meetings recently. And I think it'd probably be good to make sure that the vice mayor is here in case you have to step out again. So I would like to waive Rule 5 and pass vice mayor on to another council member this year, and hopefully it will come back to me next year.
I don't miss many meetings, and I've only had to recuse myself 4 times in 12 years, but it does happen occasionally. So in the rotation, Councilmember Beckman would be the next vice mayor, I believe. So would that be fine to put on consent? And then you can actually take care of the item that I have to recuse myself from? Everyone comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. 11.2.
Appoint council members to regional miscellaneous boards. Council members, if you wish to discuss this today, but in your agenda packs, I provided a list of all the regional boards, and in red, I have highlighted those that former Vice Mayor Hamilton was on. So I can go through them now, or
Let's go ahead and do that now.
so the first one that we have is the American Public Gas Association. The mayor is the alternate. Hamilton was serving as the main one. They meet 4 times a year and it moves around the country.
I
for their
figured I would
conference.
move up into that,
Okay.
most likely, because I've served on it previously.
Okay.
Is everyone all right with that?
Yes.
Okay, then
The next
Big
one
C.
is the Big C Bear Island Council. They meet on the 4th Wednesday of the month at 9 a.m. Right now, our alternate member is Councilmember Beckman, and the mayor is the second alternate.
I've got my plate pretty full. I have I have a couple of meetings that meet on Wednesday that have in the past, so I mean, I'm okay with handing that off to someone that might want it. I mean, I'd be interested, but I just can't do everything.
I mean, I can do it if everyone wants. The mayor's done it previously. Councilmember Hamilton made sense because of all of his beach activities, but if somebody else is interested in it, that's fine as well.
I'm willing to pitch in, but if it's something that you want, I'm okay with either.
No, I mean, I've got a full plate too,
Okay.
so it doesn't, I don't feel the necessity.
Okay, so then I'm willing to take, step in, council.
Okay?
All right, Clearwater Arts Alliance, Councilmember Beckman. The Courtney Campbell Scenic Highway Citizens Advisory Committee, Councilmember Bunker. Homeless Leadership Alliance, Councilmember Beckman. The Mayor's Council, Pinellas County, and Pinellas Collaborative Committee are both the mayor. Going on to the next one, School Transportation Safety Committee, that's Councilmember Beckman. The Suncoast League of Cities Board, Councilmember Beckman, and then Hamilton was serving as the alternate, so we'll need a new alternate.
I can step.
Okay.
Councilmember Beckman and then Bunker.
Yeah, the School Transportation Committee, were you going to mention that, Mark? So I was, accepted that. They don't meet very often, but they happen to meet at the same time a Wednesday morning that my Paint Your Heart Out work for the last 2 years did. So I wasn't able to attend a bunch of those, so I'm willing to share the wealth with the School Transportation.
As you said, you were interested in doing
Yeah,
that?
I attended their last meeting. I'd be happy to take over that board.
Okay.
Tampa Bay Estuary Policy Board, Councilmember Beckman, and Councilmember Bunker was the alternate.
You both comfortable retaining those?
Sure.
I am.
Okay.
Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, Councilmember Hamilton was the rep, and Councilmember Bunker was the alternate.
I'm willing to replace Mr. Humphrey.
Okay.
Everyone fine with that? Sure. There is a conflict on that fairly regularly, is there not?
With the meeting too?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton mentioned it to me on the way out.
It's every
That
second
we
like
might
that.
want to look at that. And maybe moving the work session to the afternoons on the Mondays
We
when,
can do that if council wishes.
which we used to do. But start the work sessions at 1:30.
And probably have to change the rule, or suspend the rule, one of the two.
We can amend the rule to address that.
Well, I think we ought to have representation. So I'd be willing to alter our schedule for that. Is everyone comfortable with that?
I'm good.
Okay.
And then we have Forward Pinellas, Councilmember Albritton as the representative. And then the Pension Advisory Committee, we have the mayor, former Councilmember Hamilton, and Councilmember Bunker serving on the PAC.
Mr. Margolis, would you like to weigh in on some of the changes you were interested in potentially making there?
The PAC ordinance says that council gets to have 3 appointments. Those 3 appointments can be 3 council members, could be 3 staff members, could be 3 citizens, or any combination of the 3. The only concern that I have is that historically we've had 3 council members serving on the PAC. That creates a weird situation because in Clearwater, each of you serve as trustees for the pension fund. And so we have 5 elected officials as our trustees. That means that 3 of you get to hear everything from the PAC and get to preside over disability cases, weigh in on all kinds of important decisions relating to the pension fund. But those 2 who are not on the PAC don't get the benefit of that. And so I've had some heartburn over that, because if you're one of the 2 council members who doesn't serve on the PAC, you don't get the benefit of hearing all of those important PAC decisions. The other concern that I have, and closely related to that, is that if there's 3 council members serving on the PAC, and the PAC votes to take some action, recommendation on a disability case, for example, then that recommendation comes to the trustees as a group, but it's already a fait accompli, because 3 of the council members have already voted on it, and if you're one of the 2 who wasn't on there, well, sorry for your luck, you just really, your voice doesn't get to count. So my advice to council is to consider reducing that number, now that Mr. Hamilton is no longer on council, potentially to have 2 council members serving on the PAC, and then potentially a 3rd person, whether that's either staff or whether that's a citizen or someone else, rather than a 3rd member of the trustees, so that we don't have a situation where the other 2 who aren't on the PAC feel like they're left out of it. That's only my advice, but that's not a legal requirement, it's just a suggestion.
What are your thoughts? Councilmember Bunker.
Well, I think it's a very valid point. I hadn't considered before. So if you got 3 votes going into coming in here, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
I would prefer it be a citizen, frankly. We have union representation, but I think it would be good to have another citizen on the board. Obviously, council members represent citizens as well, but the only issue is finding somebody willing to do it. It's not always a fun job, especially when you have disability pensions that come forward. The documentation is voluminous, to say the least. It can be a couple feet high. So finding people that are committed to really reading through all the material is difficult. Most of the time they're quick meetings, but I don't know what your thought is. I mean, I've served on and off on the PAC for years, and we've had one citizen that's been on quite a while who's an attorney, and it's helpful to have his insight, but
Are you suggesting 1 council member and 1 citizen?
no, I'm recommending 2 council members
And 1
and
citizen.
the one that we're dropping off be replaced by a citizen rather than staff. I think it's tough to put a staff member in that position. They have to live with other employees after making these decisions. That's my only reasoning behind that, but
What would be the process? Would we have a discussion and accept applications or from the citizens?
That would be up to council. If you're interested in exploring a citizen option, you could either put it out for a public application, or if there are citizens that any of you have in mind who you think would be good, you could.
But I think we notice it the same way we do with advisory boards and other boards, and then have it come before the council for a decision.
And
Councilmember Beckman.
there's no format, there's no update that anybody's provided for this pension advisory committee. That's inappropriate. You don't give updates to us on what's been going on at the meetings.
We can. I mean, the minutes are distributed to everybody along with all the other meetings, so you can read. Most of the meetings are pretty functory, but we've had 2 informal disability hearings recently. Do you want to go into that at all, or we'll save that for another day?
Just other than to underscore the point that although most of the meetings are perfunctory, when a disability case comes up, it is a significant amount of work to review all of the documentation. I would say that by far the most taxing function of the Pension Advisory Committee are those cases where they do have the disabilities. And maybe they have a few a year, but when they come up, they are time-consuming. The way it's currently set up, and this could be a discussion for another time, but the way it's currently set up, we differentiate informal disability hearings from formal disability hearings. Currently, the Pension Advisory Committee is authorized to do a paper review of a disability case just based on all the medical documentation and make a recommendation based solely on a paper review. That's different than where I came from. Where I came from, all of them are formal hearings where the Pension Advisory Committee, or their version of it, gets to hear testimony from the doctors, testimony from the employee, and things like that. But we have 2 different processes here that are available to the PAC.
Well, if I'm thinking about you know, if two members sit on the pension advisory committee and you're hearing more extensive information, if we're tasked to make a decision, we have access to all that information, correct?
Certainly. I mean, we make recommendations, the PAC makes recommendations for retirees, and then they come to the council.
Right.
Whenever you see those.
But there hasn't been, you know, anything contentious.
You don't, well, for retirees, you tend not to have anything contentious. The only thing we had recently was one employee, we didn't know, was he really retired, or was the notice done properly and everything else? Really the only contentious issues I've ever seen on the PAC are the disability cases. And they've been pretty clear cut recently, or they have been for the last 2 years. We haven't had one that we've really disputed. But in the past, there have been cases where the evidence is somewhat subjective. And that's when it gets a little bit more contentious. And you are talking about serious money when a disability pension is awarded.
Well, I think two and a resident is a better form.
But should we keep 3 on for the interim, Mr. Margolis, until we fill that position? Because now we're talking about leaving an even number of representatives.
That's a decision for council. The only issue is that I believe it's a 2-year appointment, so once you appoint someone, I believe that they will be on for 2 years. Theoretically,
They could resign and be replaced. could they
right,
not?
and so there are mechanisms we could do, if council would like to make an interim appointment, a little bit messy, but we could do it that way.
And just another question, which is an aside. On the informal versus the formal hearings, is that a decision the council makes, or is that a decision that the PAC also has to approve?
The PAC makes the initial decision as to whether they will require a formal hearing or not. If the PAC finds that the evidence is clear, the PAC can and historically has made a recommendation that the trustees grant it on an informal basis. The reason I put that in air quotes is because if the PAC makes that recommendation, and especially if 3 council members are on the PAC, it's already a done deal by the time it comes to the trustees.
Yeah, that's not really, I didn't communicate well. My question is, the decision, if we want to go to a system similar to your previous system, is that a decision that goes to the PAC first and then comes to the council, or is it a decision that comes to the council solely?
Oh, got it. There are 2, they can be done either way, actually. So the PAC has the ability right now under the ordinance to implement its own rules. So one way to approach that would be for the PAC itself to amend its rules, or if there was resistance among the PAC, or if they did not want to do that, the trustees always have the ultimate control over the pension fund. And so in your capacity as trustees, just like in your capacity as council or in your capacity as the CRA, you always have the power to dictate to the PAC what those rules are going to be. So that can either come from the PAC itself, or it could come from the trustees. Either way would be fine.
Okay. So are you willing to continue to serve there?
Yeah.
As am I, so, okay. Pension investment committees, it's not a council member.
Just to go back, so we're going to go with the citizen, or we're going to stay with 3 for the moment?
Well, I think we need a third for the time being, so who would
who's-
like to serve in the interim?
Okay. All your heads just swung this way. Yes, I will serve in the interim.
Okay.
Okay. So, Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority, Councilmember Albritton, Sister Cities Advisory Board, that now is open with Hamilton.
That one I would love to do.
Okay, Sister Cities.
Yeah.
Anyone else? No? Okay.
Appointments by other entities, so we have the DDB ex officio members, the mayor and Councilmember Bunker serve in this capacity. Any changes?
Yes, I'd like somebody else to take my place. I've done 2 years. Somebody?
Okay, so since I live downtown and I have a relationship with a lot of the business owners and merchants, I would be very happy to replace Mayor Hibbert.
Okay.
Florida League of Mayors, Mayor Hibbert, as well as the Tourist Development Council, and then WorkNet Pinellas Board is Councilmember Beckman. Any changes there?
Everyone good?
May I place it on consent with all the changes?
I believe so. Okay. 11.3.
Appoint a member to the countywide opioid abatement funding advisory board. Council members, in your agenda packet had details regarding the county board that we need a representative. And I believe you may appoint a council member or a member of the executive team to serve on this board, since the board has the power over public funds and will need to collaborate with other governmental entities and stakeholders, that a private citizen should not be appointed, and I believe that is what the city attorney has recommended.
Any council members that would like to do that? Councilmember Albrecht?
Well, I got a question. What are the dates, how often they meet?
I do not have those details at the moment.
So the county is still finalizing the details, but what they've told me is that they expect the work on this board to be front-loaded. So there will probably be monthly meetings up front, and up front, there's going to be probably for the first year, a significant amount of work, but after that, it will drop off dramatically. So we don't know exactly what the dates are going to be. That'll be done in consultation with whoever is serving on this board. So that's the answer for now.
It's an interesting, I may be interested in, but I'm so full with PSTA and Fort Pinellas with just the board meetings and the subcommittees and all the other stuff. Wouldn't want that to be conflicted.
As the city clerk pointed out, it does not have to be a council member who serves on this. It could be a department head, it could be someone else. I mean, I would not recommend a citizen because of the control over public funds that's being given. But if council members are kind of feeling overloaded or overwhelmed right now, it's okay to see if there are staff members who are interested as well. So.
Mr. Jennings, if no council member takes the position, do you have somebody in mind?
I do, not at this time, but we would have someone by Thursday.
Probably from FD or?
Potentially.
I'd like to take it. I'll take it.
Okay. There you have it. Consent? Yes.
Yep.
10.4.
Appoint a member to the Sister City Advisory Board as a business community representative for an unexpired term through March 31st, 2024. Council members, Mr. Brewster, who is serving in this capacity, has resigned. And in your agenda packs, you had applications for Robert Cantor, Martin D. Kelly, and Nicholas West.
Thoughts? Councilmember Beckman.
I like Mr. Kelly. I think he's a good candidate, very involved in the community, particular connection to Japan, knows our community, is demonstrably involved right now, very much an ambassador spirit in his responses, and very relationship focused. And he's viewed and attended board meetings.
I agree. I also want to add that he's actually visited 72 countries and actually has done some travel journalism. So I agree. I think he would be a great candidate.
I do too.
Consent? Sure. 11.5.
Appoint a member to the Community Development Board to serve as the alternate member for a term to expire April 30, 2026. Council members, the current alternate member, Mr. Mohammed Abdul Rahim, no longer wishes to serve in this capacity. In your agenda packs, I had applications for Diane Ekinelli, Bill Johnson, Benjamin Roy, and Nicholas West. I did note those individuals who do not fulfill the desired categories as listed by code, and that was Mr. Johnson and Mr. West. And I'm just going to state this for the public record. So according to the city code, the city commission shall seek a membership with diverse economic, social, and professional representation and shall include members qualified as experienced in the fields of architecture, planning, landscape architecture, engineering, construction, planning and land use law, and real estate.
I'd like to push this one till Thursday. I heard there's some other people that may apply.
Okay.
So we'll leave that one off consent. Any questions though at this time?
I do.
Councilmember Beckman.
So I have a question about the statement that Ms. Call just read, where the commission shall seek a membership with diverse economic, social, and professional representation, and shall include members qualified and experienced in these fields. And we go through those fields. And then at the second page of this, it said, we have an asterisk, and it says, listed work experience falls outside preferred professional background. Well, I wonder about the word preferred, because does that mean we prefer professional background over diverse social, professional, and economic representation? So are they weighted differently? You know, do we want to fill them with positions first and then economic and social diversity second? Or is it all equally valuable?
I believe it's all equally valued as it's stated in code, but there is a historical practice of council to appoint individuals outside of those professions. That's why I placed the asterisk based on, I think it was last month that we were trying to fill 2 members of the Community Development Board. I did reach out to those individuals who did apply last month, and no response in terms of the specific alternate members. So that's why I provide that information. I believe it's equal, but
So
it's really...
But you reached out to them, but we did have, like, Mr. Johnson applied last time and he's applying again.
He expressed a willingness to serve in the alternate capacity, so that's the issue. It's the alternate members, so...
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on that? All right, 12.1.
Oh, wait, we got one more. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's it.
Mayor,
I got you this.
This is the authorization to hire legal counsel to represent the city, as well as our former HR director, Joe Rosetto. This is an employment dispute involving one of our current firefighters. Mr. Kohler is here if you have any questions, but if there's questions regarding the substance of litigation, I'd rather discuss it during our one-on-ones rather than a public meeting.
Any questions? Consent?
Yep.
12.2.
Mayor, this, I'm pleased to announce, is the resolution to the North Beach Garage saga. Mr. Foligno is here. I'd like to thank him for his hard work on this case. This matter is being resolved, and in short, the city will get our $12.5 million as contemplated originally, but we will be selling the garage to SCI instead of selling it to Covenant Properties. Covenant is agreed to those terms, SCI has agreed to those terms, and so we look forward to bringing that to a closing within the next 30 to 60 days.
Any questions at long last? Consent?
Yes.
Okay. 12.3.
12.3 has no cost associated with it. It's simply a amendment to an existing legal services agreement. Mr. Foligno is here to answer any questions. This was a dispute over the boat ramp ownership, but that agreement expired, so it's simply extending that agreement. Does not have any cost associated with it. It's just the agreement expired, just extending the terms of that for our outside counsel.
Any questions? Consent?
Yes.
12.4. Now, 12.4 through 12.28 are second readings. Any questions on any
Mayor?
of? Yes, ma'am.
I actually do have an update. So I was informed this morning that items 12.15, 12.16, and 12.17, and that is regarding 2635 Woodring Drive, needs to be continued to a date uncertain. I will update the agenda items for those, and that is because the application at the county level still has not been approved, and in order for us to complete it, it needs to complete that process.
Okay. Any other questions on this?
Mayor, no other questions. If I could just make just a brief comment on 12.26, 12.27, and 12.28. Ms. Call and I discussed this. I know it's titled in the agenda as adopt the ordinances on second reading, but I just wanted to clarify for the record that those have never passed on first reading. Right now, it's just the way, because it's already been noticed. So I just wanted to put that out there for the record.
Okay. Any questions about those three? All right, city manager verbal reports?
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council and the public, I just want to make everyone aware that the council will be in workshop next Monday at 9 a.m. For strategic planning. It is open to the public. Joelle will be issuing a press release just so everyone knows that it will be a facilitated discussion. And so that will help inform city staff's recommendations from a budget standpoint and certainly the strategic planning and goals for the council. It is my intent to bring the ARPA recommendations, the American Rescue Plan recommendations, city staff recommendations at the May 5th council meeting. And so we have a little over $22 million, and we will have a list of recommendations for the council to review. With that, I'm good.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Anything else, Mr. Margolis?
No, sir.
Okay. Item 15.1, continuum of care updates. Councilmember Beckman.
Thank you. So I have, Rosemary, do you have handouts? Did Tammy give you packets on Friday?
I don't think so. I was out Friday, so.
Oh, okay. All right, well, I'm going to go through some information for you. I thought that I would have these handouts that I have developed, so.
Do you want to do it on Thursday night?
Yeah, I mean, if you think we have time with all those second readings?
Well,
yeah, let's do it.
I'll make sure it's
it
attached.
is what it is.
Okay.
We haven't had a really long meeting yet. Y'all haven't had a terrible meeting. Not that I want
Might as well
to,
jump
but-
right into it, right?
Yes, absolutely. Trial by fire. All right. Any future business that anyone would like to have discussed on a future agenda? Councilmember Beckman.
Well, there's a couple of things that I've put on for future council work sessions, and, one of them was annual measurable goals for our city attorney and or city manager, and so I'm wondering if that's going to come up, because, we're halfway through the year, and is that, I think with our new council, it's worth a discussion. You guys open to that for discussion?
We can talk about it.
Okay.
Anything else?
So could I just get a little direction there? Do you want that on, the May 5th meeting, since that'll be our next meeting?
Well, it will be on the 2nd. We discuss it at the work session.
Okay.
And then if there's any
That's what it
action,
meant.
then we can take it
Okay,
on the 5th.
great.
Okay? All right, with that, we are adjourned. We'll see you all Thursday.